Charlie and I are really excited about the next step of this exercise of a return to where we were. So first of all, this is not a reinvention, as we talked about several weeks ago, in February, I think it was. We really talked about returning to Ellsworth's historic identity rather than reinventing it. So what you're going to see tonight is how the idea is taking shape. And again, you know, it's not just a logo, it's truly a whole system. So it's really got to be designed to work all together over many different concepts. So built in partnership with the Portland Design Company, we went from 6 concepts down to 3, and I'm going to show you those 3 concepts tonight. And we'll walk through them. We'll walk through them individually. Now, I'm wondering why I wonder how I advance it, because it's not doing it right from here. So, oh, there we go. There. Just needed your magic touch there, Charlie. Okay, so, you see it all right? All right, so here we have, so again, 3 options. I'm going to walk us through. Thank you. So this is direction 1, okay? In our discussions, we really felt that this one just wasn't quite there yet. It leaned a little bit too much into history, and it may not give us the flexibility that we needed moving forward, especially across digital and other future applications. And the font on this one's a little tricky, right? So that's option 1. Here's option 2. Now, I know that like, to the naked eye, these 3 may not have huge sweeping differences, but I'll tell you, Charlie and I and a number of our team have pored over these. So this is option 2. So what we're seeing here is we really didn't feel that this one landed quite as strongly in either direction, either contemporary or historic. So it kind of sits in the middle of them. It doesn't really have that level of clarity or flexibility that we're going to need. So, and this one as well, you know, the font isn't where we wanted it. It's really not quite as professional as we want. So that's option 2. And here we go at direction number 3. So this is the one that really clicked for us. So there are some tweaks coming soon to this direction, but this is the one, yep, this is the one that, that we're really kind of leaning into, right? This one strikes the strongest balance between honoring Ellsworth's history, hi Sue, and really giving us something that really will work today and will work into the future. So on this one, you'll see that nod to the historic sketch of our City Hall and the cupola and the weather vane. And again, keep in mind, folks, there are some edits that we're going to be making to this that will be coming soon. But this is really the option that's cleaner, it's the cleanest, it's more adaptable than the other 2, and it's more usable across all of the different areas like signage, from digital to clothing to the fleet of vehicles. So that's that, and most importantly, it really, we felt strongly that it really feels like Ellsworth. So it reflects what we heard, and that's really important to us, and what we value, and where we're going. And the other good thing is, as a bonus, the kids loved it, right? Charlie floated this by the kids at STEM a couple weeks ago. Love that, right, Charlie?
Yep.
So yes, so we are refining this a little bit, but indeed this is the direction that we're moving in. So here we go. So here's the 3 of them. So after reviewing all 3 and working very closely with our team, we are recommending direction 3 with a few small tweaks. So we have some refining coming to that direction, but that is indeed where we're headed. So why direction 3? So here's a list of some of the strong reasons why we're going in this direction. I don't need to read them all to you, but really it comes down to balance and flexibility and a good fit for Ellsworth while still staying true to our history And again, I'll reiterate, it isn't about picking a logo, it's really about choosing a concept and a system. So it's about how Ellsworth will show up consistently everywhere where we show up. So Direction 3 really does give us the strongest foundation to do that, and to do that really well. So our focus tonight is really to share these recommendations, to chat and get your feedback, to continue working with our partner, the Portland Design Company, to get those final refinements done, and then to truly prepare a thoughtful, phased rollout to our community. So, there you have it.
I've got a couple. First, just thank you so much to Amy here. One of the reasons that we brought her in is her incredible expertise with branding, and in addition to all this work here, I mean, there was like 9 original directions that we had with different colors and different options, and some a little wilder than others. And we did, so the survey on a lot of this. We brought it to one council meeting. One of the kind of just small edits that they're making here, I think that is we're kind of moving away from the weather vane as like the little mini logo for everything. We're going to stick to kind of the cupola. It wasn't, I think, which was one of the giant torches. They're also working on like one that has like the word Maine in it. I think we want to stick to just mostly Ellsworth, the friendly city, but also have an option that's a little bit more kind of tourist friendly on Ellsworth, Maine, and having that piece. They're going to try to get us a little loon.
As one of our icons.
As one of our icons. That was a staff recommendation on the invasive cattail. Might not be the best representation.
And the invasive lupins.
The invasive I think that was Danielle that asked us to remove that.
Yeah, and the beautiful tremolos from our gort. They wouldn't let me bring a moose. I did say that there was one downtown, but folks didn't really think that was very Ellsworth.
One right by my office window.
Yeah, on Branch Lake. There's one that's always in my
See?
backyard.
I feel like we could adopt the moose a little more.
I've never seen a moose in Ellsworth or in Acadia, but that doesn't stop them.
You're gonna be at the right spot at the right time. Oh my God, what's that on my wall?
So we'll be going to kind of more, and also Amy's just awesome because she's so in the weeds on like, hey, does this work with an embroidery firm to get put on a hat? Which is like sometimes you see our logo on things and it's just it's just a blob of. And also just from a budget perspective too, like this branding work is really to help guide the wayfinding signage piece, which we need. This is the new stuff we're going to put on. Welcome to Ellsworth, and the color theme. So before we can kind of get to that, we need to have this piece. But also just so taxpayers know, like we're not ripping off every decal off every car and putting the new like. We're going to let this slowly play in. We're not having a new, a big, as things wear out, and we can put them on there digitally. Obviously, it's free to just update all our digital materials, and a lot of these will be. So we'll have a big kind of initial push, but there's not a big budget request ask here to replace all the logos and all the trucks or anything. But if one breaks down and gets replaced with something else, we put the new logo on that. Some key aspects gets renovated, put the new logo on that, and just. A little bit more of a piecemeal approach to this transition. Thought about doing some swag too, but budget conscious. I might pay for my own and see if I can get enough of people subscriing to it to go. And we had a conversation today with every volunteers, and maybe we can.
You did?
Yeah, and maybe we can use that as a way to get some new. If people want to, staff wants to volunteer for a day, they can get a hat with the logo on it. Or the community wants to volunteer. Maybe we have them for purchase or sale, and $5 goes to the Parks and Rec department or something like that.
Yeah, I like the idea.
You like balloon?
Yeah, balloon or, a deer.
How do you incorporate the little images into, like, when do you use those?
The little icons along
Yes,
the bottom?
icons, yes.
And that's a great question. So it could be as part of a story or an article on the website or through social media. It could be even, when you open a tab on your browser, there's often like a little image. It could be that, like the little icon that could start to resonate with Ellsworth. Like, I love the cupola and how that ties in. It might be as well, like when you see the second row there, I don't know if it's, so you see Public Works, and, so those are departments. So we're picturing those things on clothing. So we're not gonna do the weather vane, we're gonna do the cupola on there. So this gives us some flexibility to play around with what we might be able to flip out just to keep it fresh, while still staying consistent, almost like it's a deck of cards that all looks alike, although there have some differences to them.
Yeah, like for instance, maybe Public Works has the cupola, but Parks and Rec has the tree or something like that, or kind of staying.
So for on clothing, it'll remain consistent, and the only thing that
And the
will
trucks
change-
and everything.
Right, so, yes, and it's gonna be the cupola. But those icons, Tabitha, they could be used through social media, they could be used maybe on memos, through other articles, maybe like window clings, things just to add little accents to the brand. Yeah, good question.
Like a
Thank you.
proclamation would be either the cupola or the whole building at the top would be a choice, you know what I mean?
You mean like on letterhead, Patrick?
Well,
Something
like
that?
you're giving away giving a certificate.
Oh, yeah,
for
yeah,
you.
as an award, right.
Something to, you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah, that's a great idea, yeah,
To,
right,
you know,
yeah, good.
Yeah, and I think it was also just it was a great research project to work with Amy on and the team. Resurfacing the friendly city, which has kind of been stared at us the whole time in some ways. It's on a lot of like the old postcards. You actually go to the library, you'll see some of the blow-up images they have. There'll be blow-ups of the old postcards. You've seen these guys, oh, friendly city. And then the importance of City Hall too, I think, as a that came up in the research on what people were, hey, what do you recognize?
Icon, right, yeah, and they mentioned the bridge, and I think some of that feedback is what we pulled upon to come up with these these icons along the bottom. And the other thing too is our Discover Ellsworth work, that site is now live, and we kept that in mind as well as we went through this exercise, so. And then, of course, there's the library. They're gonna be going live with their new brand later this month, and they use the same company. So we wanted, again, to look gelled, like we're all one family. Yeah. So that's my presentation.
I think
say,
maybe
it
we're
weren't that bad. Great.
This one dropped in on me.
Well, there's a couple other fits and starts too. We had somebody recognize that, like, hey, the Friendly looks like Friendly's ice cream font. And I was like, oh, thank God somebody saw that.
Yeah.
Because it looked exactly like the Friendly's ice cream font. It is a Friendly font, but and we talked to the kids on some of the, there's a few options before. One had a green and white, and I had the kids vote on what they like with red versus green, and they were like, I think it was 18-3 on the kid votes for stick with the red and green.
Wow, really?
Yeah, they didn't like the green and white. MDI.
Oh, you asked the STEM kids, right? The Ellsworth kids. Yeah.
The Ellsworth kids, they were like, this is MDI's color. I was like, oh man.
Oh, yeah. Oh my
Disaster.
gosh, that would have been a disaster. Oh, we needed
Got the
that.
Friendlies
Mhm.
font, green and white like MDI. Oh man.
Did you
So,
still need it?
Yeah.
Oh,
That's fine.
Danielle, I'm so
No,
sorry.
that's okay, no.
Yeah, and I'd say the resurface, in addition to our current logo, kind of incorporating City Hall. The kind of original logos from also had a stylized version of City Hall as I think it's a Georgian Revival building. It's just such a, they don't make them like this anymore in New York. It's such a beautiful building to work with there.
I'm really excited about this. It's just gonna look so fresh and coherent. It's gonna be exciting. Yeah, nice work.
Love it.
We won't have
Thank you.
we'll have more than the 34 KB kilobyte font logo to put on. So you can blow it up and it doesn't
Yeah.
wildly pixelize. So, I think it was great for the time that it was. I think it was made by like city manager's assistant 25 years ago. So it'd be nice to have a little bit more large collection of assets.
Yeah, that's true.
We don't really have a time frame yet. I think we'll let the library have their day on April 20th, and then
Yeah.
we'll figure out our own little launch plan. And yeah, you'll probably see some changes in the memos. And that's another piece of this. We're getting a font and style guide, because it is a bit more. Like, here's how you use the colors. Here's how you use the fonts. when you have that in an organization, it can help with kind of cultural consistency across places.
Well, right, and people just can't go rogue that way either, because there's parameters that,
Right.
yeah.
Like, right now, you look at our signage, like, you can see, the Commerce Park sign looks one way, for the city of Ellsworth with one kind of font landscape and symbols, and then, you'll see, some parking signs over here that use like a different version of City Hall and a branding for City Hall, and then the stuff on our, memos and the general logos and the websites, so, having all these things start to be like, this is it, wherever you go, it's, with Andy's experiences with the Knights, it's, in my experiences in the branding areas, it's like such a small but important piece to have consistent branding, so like, oh, I'm in Ellsworth, in the Ellsworth ecosystem.
And it was good too, with all the work that Twyla did with the wayfinding committee, kind of keeping all that in mind as we were moving through this as well as helpful.
Yeah, and the friendly city, I'm super excited about that for
Yeah,
a
me
lot of
too.
reasons. Just, to me, it is what I love about Ellsworth. It's a friendly, approachable city that still has a lot of that like small town charm that most cities have lost. How do we kind of keep that? How can we be more- And it's also aspirational. Are we being business friendly with this? Are we being parks friendly? Are they approachable? Is our staff being friendly? Are our citizens being friendly?
Yeah, there's a lot we can play off, like business friendly, like pet friendly, or, child friendly, dog friendly. There's gonna be a lot of fun once we get established with the brand too, I think, that we can play off of.
And good new schwack.
Right, right.
Okay.
That's it.
Thank you, Amy.
That's
Great.
pretty
Thank
nice,
you,
guys. That was fun. Yeah.
All right, Danielle, take it away.
Not my turn.
Well, I think you've got the fire truck.
Sorry, guys. Okay. You guys can go first.
Do you guys want to come sit with us, Dave?
Sure, I'll come sit with you. We'll let Tyler come out because he's a big, huge part of this. So as you know, Thursday, we're going to be coming before you to authorize the purchase of the fire truck. Back in October, you authorized the band funds for the replacement of engine 7 so that we could replace engine 7, which was a reserve fire truck. And in doing so, once a new fire truck came in, engine 2, which is a frontline engine currently, but also costs us the most money in repairs, will be put into reserve status, so we can get 5 more years out of that truck once it moves into reserve status. So after you guys gave me the approval, what I did is I met with the captains and came up with a apparatus committee, and I charged them with the boundaries that I had set. One with the money that you guys had authorized to, but really was to set some parameters on. We didn't want to spend $1 million on a fire truck. We wanted to be very, very diligent about making sure we got the right truck for Ellsworth, but that we were also budget conscious about it, because we knew in order to bring a fire truck into Ellsworth, we were also gonna have to outfit it. So when the truck rolled in the door, it was ready to start responding to calls, which means we have to equip it. The stuff that's on engine 7 currently is aged out equipment. It doesn't belong on a new fire truck. So, and I'm gonna push this over to Tyler because these guys did an incredible amount of work in a very short period of time. It's a process that usually takes a year to do when they're specing trucks, and they started in November.
Yeah, we started meeting in November, and then we had our spec done pretty quick, but we were at the mercy of vendors with their timelines, because they're very busy. We just recently got the last proposal in a week and a half ago, a week ago, so it's been a very tight timeline, but we didn't cut any corners, rest assured. We did our homework. Spent a lot of time deciding what we needed versus what we wanted. Some of that can be seen. I tried to break it down pretty straightforward for you guys. Some of the cost-saving measures that we did. One in particular is you see in the last page, the Cummins L9 engine. So the EPA, I'm sure Councilor Allen is aware of this. In 2027, they're coming out with new emission standards. That's making diesel engines a lot more expensive. They recently rolled back some of that, but manufacturers aren't jumping on that bandwagon. They're still rolling out the 2027 emission standards. This engine is, as far as we know, the last engine available anyway. Pierce just happens to have one sitting on the shelf, and currently it's allocated for Ellsworth until April 10th. So if we were to not pursue this contract before the 10th of April, you would have to add at minimum 65,000 to the cost. And then July 1, there was also a price increase that we're undetermined on now. Of all the vendors, we reached out to, there's four major reps in the state that we can source apparatus from.
Were you purposely just looking for in-state vendors?
Yeah, mostly for service work. It gets could be a logistical nightmare to get any apparatus to Massachusetts or further away, and especially a fire truck. Currently, our service goes to Brunswick for most everything, Brunswick or Auburn. For us, that doesn't sound bad in your car, it's a 2-hour drive, but in a fire truck, we're maxed out at 65. It's a
And
long ride.
and we lose the truck for upwards of a week because we're not, just because we have an appointment doesn't mean we're gonna get in.
Right.
So we could lose a truck for a week just by going from Brunswick or to Auburn.
Yeah.
And Pierce is in Bangor?
Correct.
Yeah. So let's see, I'll just go down through the list of vendors. If you have any questions, let me know.
Did you guys do an RFP, or did you just reach out to the vendors and tell them what you were looking for?
So we reached out to the vendors, and told them what we were looking for, we gave them all the same specifications. We didn't write a full spec, down to like tire size and stuff like that. They met with us, we gave them everything that we needed out of the truck, size constraints, the firefighting capability that we wanted, and then they came back to us. We made some tweaks, and we made sure that it was truck for truck, it wasn't bananas and apples, it was comparable. K&T is in Island Falls, they're one of the older reps, they haven't really been able to keep up with some of the bigger departments that have been bought out by larger companies. They were unable to participate in any cooperative purchasing. They couldn't meet a reasonable delivery timeline, and on one of their trucks, they couldn't meet the specifications. And it's also a 3-hour ride for service. Greenwood, we have one apparatus that we purchased from Greenwood currently, that's our engine 2. The rep was very upfront when we met with him. He said, I can't even give you a stock truck with no options for under $1 million. So we wrote that off right at the gate. They also sell Spartan trucks. Custom truck wouldn't fit in the budget, so he gave us a stock truck price, which is basically, here's a truck, make it work for you. It didn't meet our specifications. Northeast emergency apparatus, as you can see, one is well over budget. So we just looked that off, it did meet the spec through the cost. The closest one to Allegiance price-wise is Ferrara. The downfall with them is they did not meet our spec due to the box configuration. We need full height compartments to store rescue tools, and they couldn't do that. So finally, we get down to Allegiance. They met all our specifications. Service time is a 45-minute ride. They're a single source vendor and manufacturer, meaning they only sell one truck. They don't push a bunch of different apparatus. They work directly with the manufacturer. The cost is obviously the cheapest. With that prepayment option, it's well under budget and allows us to have the funding we need to equip the truck, especially with the sale of engines. And it has the quickest delivery time, 13 months from the contract sign.
The sale of engines?
The reserve piece,
Okay.
the one that's in reserve, once the new truck comes in, that truck will be now slated as out of service, because engine 2 that's downstairs will move over into that place as a reserve truck. So once the new fire truck will be a front line, front line.
So what is the X?
Sorry.
Are we clear?
Yep.
What's the expected revenue from the
Depends on the path that we take. If you guys want us to auction it off, then it's really what you guys settle on.
But I think the hope we have to go through a
Third-party broker, there's a couple of third-party brokers that we can use. One of them, just at sitting, has a truck at roughly $100,000. Doesn't mean we're gonna get $100,000 for that.
Recommending this price.
Recommend, yeah, so, but it would be far above if we were to auction that truck off and get $20,000 or $30,000.
I guess that's where I'm trying to land. What's a very conservative number?
I think we're figuring we'd probably get between $50,000 and $75,000 for that truck if we broker it.
Yeah, if we can broker it. If it goes to auction, I would say, it's a variable, 20,000 would be my guess, because it's gonna go to a small volunteer department that doesn't have a lot of money. There's not a big market for those trucks in this area.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking.
Really.
You don't, I don't know, but I guess it seems that fire trucks don't bring a whole lot of money. Maybe I'm wrong.
They're,
Depends on the age, so this is one of those things we had talked about in the past. Somewhere in that age range, 9, 10, 11 years old, it's still holding its value. And the turnaround on that, you're still getting a top dollar for it because it really hasn't exceeded its lifespan. The maintenance costs are outweighing its value. Once we start pushing that limit, now engine 7 is coming up on 20 years old. So it's beyond its, for our type of department, it's beyond its true service life. Mileage on it, for a volunteer fire department, that truck's only got 50,
yeah.
I think it was 56,000 miles on it. I don't remember what it had for engine hours on it.
I like to explain it like, it's prorated, basically, for every year that it's used. So if it's 500,000 new, 20 years down the road, or 10 years down the road, halfway through its service life, it's worth 250,000. There's no real market-driven cost, it's more proration. The best way I can describe it.
Yeah.
Because typically, the mileage may be lower than what the hours are, because you go to a site,
Idle time.
and you got it idling, and then you hook it up.
I think that truck's at a little over 3,000 engine hours on it, is what,
Yeah.
if I remember right.
Yeah, because you're using it to pump water, pull water, push it.
This, the Allegiance Fire and Rescue, the Pierce model, you said that's the only one they sell, or is what
They
this?
only sell Pierce apparatus.
Apparatus, okay. Are there other departments in the area that use this apparatus?
Yep.
Yep, Bangor does,
Brewer, Camden, trying to think of where the new, he said the newest one.
Wiscasset.
Wiscasset, yeah.
Have you reached out to any of those departments about their satisfaction with it?
Very high satisfaction ratings across the board, even from their older trucks to current. The most recent delivery, they're very happy with. We did that with all the manufacturers. Ferrara got some negative feedback. The Island, Mount Desert, just bought a Ferrara, and that's been broke down more than it's been in service. It was broke down on the way to take delivery. And then they had to deal with some other issues.
Yep.
It broke down going to the scene, and I think a building tire, it broke down.
Correct.
So, could happen to any of them, work the bugs out.
Actually, it's out of service again from the fire last week.
I think the city had Pierce, a couple of Pierces, a long time ago.
I think the old ladder was an American with France.
That was, yeah, they had a couple American LaFrance.
I don't remember if the old engine 7 was a Pierce or not, and they got an American too.
Yeah, a couple of
Four
houses.
I have a
Yeah,
Question. So this is just for the truck itself. It takes 13 months to build that out and without any of
The equipment.
the equipment on it.
Sorry.
So you'll be coming, is that coming to this 13 months out? I guess that would put us into,
Next night.
yeah, so still in fiscal 27. So you'll be asking to outfit it.
Actually, in this, when we come to you on Thursday, we're asking to do it all. Because we want to get all that stuff at the current pricing and not try and do this next year and wind up with all the every 6-month increases. We want to be able to have this stuff ready for when it gets here. And there's some stuff that we can authorize the builder to source and have them install it there. That way when the truck comes here, we just have to put stuff on the truck. So, but that's part of that memo for Thursday night, is to kind of do this all as one package, and let's take care of it all at once.
Is that stay in the million? I feel like that's gonna be
No, we plan to stay under $1 million
for the whole
for the whole
kit
thing.
and caboodle.
Yep.
Oh, wow.
Not counting the engine 7. If it was over $1 million, it would be, engine 7 would make up whatever we spend.
Oh,
Yeah.
So that was, my question is what happens with the net from engine 7? Does that go into the same fund?
So what I asked for is that whatever the balance was, is that go into a fire department capital reserve for future purchases.
Yep, that makes sense. And if I did the math right, the discount for prepaid is around 3.7%, which is better than we would do putting it in an account or holding off on whatever we're paying in the bond. So that seems like a good savings.
One benefit with Pierce, they send their trucks with ground ladders, which doesn't sound like a big deal, but it's about $4,000 to purchase ladders, and then shipping is almost as much as that. So we save some money there too. It's not going to show in this breakdown.
Patrick, you asked about the RFP, because they really kind of prioritize Sourcewell and like the competitive cooperative purchases. So it's worth mentioning is, that allows the city to kind of piggyback onto larger government cooperative purchases and essentially, like, this is the type of truck we need, and be able to review these prices and know that, essentially that work's already been done for us for a much larger government cooperative purchase. So that's one way just great to see what was available, and it's also one of the reasons that the chief, and thanks to the quick work of Captain Kennedy, saw this option was available and we could go through Sourcewell for it. It's something that we should consider, so I added it to the special meeting for next week. This is, seems like it could be a good idea to move forward with. I know we've been talking about this actually for a while. I think the previous city council passed the van funding. Before that, we had a lot of capital discussions on what was the most need in the city in kind of year one. The school track, and this came to the top of the list. Sarah's coming back with the full 10-year plan. I know we did a preview of that at the last workshop. We're just trying to eat away each year a little bit of our most prioritized capital pieces.
Are the cost-saving measures things that you guys just really didn't need, or are there like?
Yeah, they're not needed, and some of them are like a dual purpose cost savings or long-term cost savings. The engine, we just got lucky with that. The X15 isn't out yet. Anytime there is a new engine, there's going to be kinks to work out, so we got lucky there. The front suspension would be amazing to have. Everybody that has it in their trucks says you shouldn't buy this truck without it. But we would rather use $40,000 to buy, functional equipment than have a comfortable ride. Compressed air foam system, they're great for fighting fires, especially when you're short-handed, like we are a lot of the time. But they have a lot of issues and long-term maintenance costs that we've experienced on engine 7 and engine 2. So the cost and the maintenance kind of outweighs its effectiveness. The electronic intake valves, they're great for a pump operator to be able to open the valves on the opposite side of the truck quickly. But again, they're very expensive, they break down, and they fail, so they still have to open them manually. Painted roller doors, that's just a cosmetic thing, makes the truck look better. Multiplex driver controls, those are nice, but again, the price doesn't really justify the need. And the aluminum hose vent cover, that makes it nice for snow, being able to walk on top of the truck, but for $7,000, we've done just fine with canvas covers ever since fire trucks were built. The galvanized frame rails, that was a $6,000 expense, but Pierce dips theirs in an E-coating. Supposedly it holds up better than galvanized because it's an actual coating, so it protects against abrasive wear, not just corrosion. And then obviously the prepayment options there.
So these are something, maybe they're nice, but when you balance it out, it's not worth the cost. And this version that you've come up with, you can still fight fires as well as you does it in the water too.
One of the approaches that we had them do from the beginning was wants, needs, and wishes, and they started trimming from there. So that's really what they did. So
Yeah.
really, we're down to a purpose-built fire truck that's made for the city of Ellsworth with what they need to do their job effectively, with the least amount of interruption.
And it comes in under budget.
That was the goal.
We built our,
Appreciate that one.
we built our dream truck the first meeting and then that quickly went up.
Kind of like designing a house.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
The in-ground pool disappeared pretty quickly.
No, this is a very functional truck that should last us well for the service life. It's got some improvements over engine 2 now. We changed some hose lays and added a couple things, just how we operate now, so it'll be an upgrade for sure.
Like I said, I gotta give that apparatus committee, they did all the work.
They put in a lot of time and effort,
Yeah.
made it happen.
I gotta say, I love the idea of getting the last of a good known engine as opposed to the first.
Yeah.
We have
New
had,
standards and okay.
We have had some issues with the L9, but I think we probably have them with any engine, and a lot of that is just keeping up on the maintenance. Cummins makes a good engine.
and will the company in Bangor help you with maintenance?
All the warranty work and everything.
It's all,
Yeah.
through Allegiance?
Yeah.
They do a lot of mobile service work, which is nice. They bring a truck right to the station.
Yeah.
The other good thing is being a Cummins engine, call us for work on the engine. If, once it's out of warranty, you don't have to go to Moore. You can go right to George's. Keep it local.
Where is this Allegiant Fire and Rescue located in Bangor?
Over by the airport, I think, if I remember right. I don't have the card on me.
They're actually at Herman, Coldbrook Road.
I forget the name of who they were before they were Allegiant. You're probably familiar with who.
Are they the truck dealer there? The Allegiant's truck
They're
dealer?
out by Holton, Dayton.
Dago, yeah. So that is,
So it's
that's,
the same as the truck dealer there that bought out Daigle and Houghton?
I believe so.
it is,
Okay.
yeah, that's them. And all they've,
It
They've
just
take-
went poof into my mind.
yeah, they've
That's
taken
what-
all the mechanics when they come underneath the Allegiance umbrella and have sent them all the training, so they're all certified fire mechanics.
Great.
So they're able to work on all the pumps and they're certified to do that. And all the electrical systems and everything.
Before that, the closest office was in, I think it was Attleboro, Mass.
Yep.
And then they branched out and came to Bangor. Or Herman.
Close enough.
Yeah.
So it's not 3 hours away.
I appreciate the background, seeing the thinking that went behind the decision. It makes sense.
Any other questions from council, for chief and captain?
Ooh, we could put the new logo on this in 14 months.
Anything else you want to see when we come on Thursday?
I think this is great.
And we made
The question was directed at you.
Oh, it was?
Is there anything else that you would like to see before we come to you on Thursday, when we come on Thursday?
I don't see that there is. I was a little confused about this fire and rescue, so it's Allegiance. Who builds the truck itself?
Pierce Manufacturing.
So the carrier is Pierce or it's another carrier?
So the manufacturer is Pierce. Allegiance
That's
is
the
just
body, right?
Yeah, that would be the body, yeah, everything. Body, chassis, they build their own frame rails and everything. A lot of their stuff is proprietary to Pierce for building the truck.
No, we just.
It'll be built down in Florida.
So it's not like an international truck
No,
with a Pierce body.
no, this is a frame up.
Yeah, I think we'll just try to keep in mind, maybe even Captain Kennedy, you're so great today. I'm just, the council has heard a lot of this before, letting videos know to the community, so especially some of the cost saving pieces down here, the source well, the cost savings, those pieces, just that way they don't think it's like, wow, they haven't even discussed this at all.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, thanks for our work, that's ready. Okay, up next is Danielle with a comprehensive ordinance project update.
I'm trying to save computer battery power, so I signed back out of the Teams meeting stuff. So I'm just here to give you an update on how we're doing with the ordinance project. And so, okay, so I wanted to give you an update on the project itself and tell you what we've been up to since the original workshop that we came to you on Groundhog's Day, ironically enough. And so I'm gonna go through just a reminder of the background, the reason why this project is happening. We all know that Ellsworth is seeing huge growth. It's the fastest growing city in Maine. And we went through some pretty substantial strategic planning efforts a couple years ago. And as part of that, we adopted a new comprehensive plan, a housing needs assessment. There was a business needs assessment plan that came out of that as well. And the comp plan really pointed to a slew of ordinance revisions that needed to happen in order to implement the recommendations and the priority projects that were identified in the comp plan. So that's why this project came to fruition. Here are some of the goals of the project overall. We wanted to make it a lot more understandable and usable by removing outdated language, any conflicting language as well. We wanted to streamline a lot of our processes, not just the development, but that was a focus for sure. Clarifying what to staff, applicants, and the public how to use and who is responsible for what parts of our code. Obviously, a big one is complying with state statutes and land use law. There have been a lot of changes recently. We want to make sure that we're in compliance with that, and of course aligning with these plans and these strategic planning efforts. It's a two-phased approach that we're using, and right now we are in the midst of phase one. And phase one is really focusing on the technical updates to our ordinance and bringing things into legal compliance with this, with our land use ordinances, and align with some recent state laws that may be changing. We're not quite sure. Nancy's very familiar with what's going on with this.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're keeping an eye on that, but one of the amendments is related to the state statute LD 1829. You'll hear us talk about it a lot, and those amendments related to that law have to be in place by July 1st of this summer. There's a fix-it bill that's coming through and has been workshopped ad nauseum at the state level, and one of the things that really would apply to us, the thing that I'm hoping for actually, is an extension on that compliance date to the following summer, so to July of 2027. That would give us some more breathing room, of course, but right now, until that passes, we have to move forward with the understanding that we have that July 1st
And that did get
date.
into the final bill language,
I
for
believe so.
2173, but it has to pass.
It has to pass,
Yeah.
and we're anticipating it'll go up in, we'll know by mid-April, we'll know by the middle of this month, is my
Legislature turns on the
understanding.
15th. So
Yes.
probably most bills are going to get run this week.
Okay, yeah, so we will know soon.
Are you feeling like really rushed to get this done by this date?
No, it's more that, because the process of reviewing everything started back in September when this bill thing was kind of like a twinkle in the eye. So we had been moving forward with this plan anyway. I think it's more that if we miss the boat of approving it in June, then there will be a time frame until we adopt these amendments that will be out of compliance with the state law.
Yeah, because 2173 backs off on some of the 1829 rules
Yeah.
to make it better.
The 2173 is what they're considering right now to amend.
Yeah,
Yes.
it is out of the committee, it's waiting, it's got to go to the House and Senate and such.
But it's more like if the council isn't okay with this, then we would be out of compliance with the state, but not necessarily that you feel like the ordinances are, or your work that you've been doing has been rushed and done too quickly.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't believe that the housekeeping ordinance, the housekeeping revisions, I don't think they were rushed. Because they are, and I'll go through this a little bit more, but they're not very complex things. They're things like making sure the numbering is right, making sure that we're not being redundant in chapters or explain a process in one chapter and another one, and then yet in a third way, and they're all kind of different. These were not policy decision-based amendments at all. So in some places, it's literally changing a word from capital to lowercase. And then there were a lot of references to the state law to make it a lot easier to understand where things were coming from and why it's in there. Yeah.
What's the spirit of the change at the state level?
Oh, so for LD 1829, it's a land use ordinance, so it's really focused on affordable housing and increasing the density of affordable housing in certain zones. And one of the things it's focused on is whether the construction is happening within one of our growth areas or outside of the growth area, and they're kind of different density requirements for either, and then whether the property is served by city water and sewer or not. It also has influence on the minimum lot size. And so it kind of shrinks the minimum lot size to a smaller size, but within the growth area and if served by city services. Outside of that, we defaulted to what already existed in our ordinance.
And if I can just be clear, it's not requiring property owners to build more densely. It says the municipality must allow it if the property owner chooses
Yes.
that density. So it's requiring the municipality to allow the property owner to do more where we want the growth in the designated growth areas. So it's,
And I could be wrong on this one,
That's a
but
good distinction.
I think the consultant was mentioning like Ellsworth's already pretty good.
Yes.
Yeah,
A lot of
Ellsworth
this
is
stuff,
really
like we're
good.
not too, like, you know, some cities and towns, yeah, they're being way too restrictive on density of building. And this is gonna come up, like, if it's or if this goes forward, you could have development be like, hey, the state law says this, your law says this, like, I'm gonna start building this, and now it's kinda like, we gotta rush to this, we're not gonna be necessarily, we're not gonna hit those tripwires as much as I think other cities and towns, because we already have a pretty
Yeah.
good, we have the growth to prove it too, so.
Yeah.
What are, I think, Steve, were you asking also like why is the state change, like?
I just want to know the spirit
Yeah.
of what the state was up to.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
what are the changes other than the applicability date that they're considering with 1829?
no, 2173 is the one that's here now.
Yeah.
It, boy, I lived it for about 3 weeks and now I've been able to set it aside for 2 weeks. I can share with you guys a summary of what it does, sure, I'm trying to look it up now. But there were some concerns about again, where there's water and sewer outside of the growth area. So it's areas that, examples were used, like there might be water and sewer that goes out to an industrial park. And the intention wasn't that we do a lot of stuff along the water and sewer, the capacities for that industrial park. 1829 says you have to allow that same density of 5,000 square feet. This change says, okay, in those areas where you're not in the growth area, it's not where the town has said we want growth, but there's the water sewer line, you have to allow 10,000 square foot. So it's that little bit of a combination for what really went against the whole spirit of a comprehensive plan and deciding growth areas are where we want to really encourage growth and like kind of accommodated the concerns that many of us raised. That's one example.
Similar to that a few years ago, LD1 or whatever.
2003 was the first.
2003.
1829 was
Yeah.
a fix it to 2003
Yes.
and went further.
Yeah.
2173 is the third in the series.
Okay.
That there are some corrections of language.
Yeah.
And even some of it was using descriptions for water and sewer. The changes in 2173 used the language from the Maine Water District Association, and the fire marshal's office came in because there was some disallowing fire marshal or the local fire chief to hold standards on some of the requirements, and it's like, that's not okay. So they listened to the Water Association, which was sewer as well, and the fire marshal's office on these changes went too far in 1829 and brought them back in.
Guess-
I spent
guess it's
many,
fine.
many days in the hearing room pushing for those kinds of changes, so.
Yeah, so it'll be more consistent
The same outcome of reducing the regulation where we want to see growth and,
and.
again, requiring the municipalities to allow if a property owner wants more density, but doing it in a way that makes more sense and the different, all of the different places that were impacted by it were coming in with these recommended changes and brought forward.
And there's a lot of this, I know there's a few years ago, there was the big like housing task force that met and proposed a lot of stuff. Is a lot of this still coming out of that, those
That,
findings?
the result of that was only 2003.
Yeah,
So now there's, I think larger scale, there was a firm that came in and set, this is where the, more recently is the standards, where every county has, 80,000 dwelling units we need more of, and how many should come from each county. All of that came after the task force, and then had consultants come in and say, here's how you implement the stuff that the commission identified.
okay, so it is kind
So,
of
a continuation.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, it's, I guess it's another way to look at it. The state has been continuing on this line. How do we remove barriers to, that are within state municipal control?
And do we anticipate, this is my last question on this line, do we anticipate like next year will be LD whatever, and that will
Fourth
be
book in the
like,
series?
yeah.
It's a new, every 2 years, it's a brand new, and so
Yeah.
there will be bills to go farther, there will be bills to reel it back. That's the nature of
Yeah.
democracy, is people
Yeah.
get to propose things.
Yeah, I just didn't know if like, because we're.
It is.
looking-
No, she's right.
Because we're planning on implementing and trying to come into compliance, I just didn't know if there's something on the horizon that we should be like, oh, it might all change next year.
What's important for you to know is that I will be retired next year and will not be living down in Augusta
There we
in the
go.
hearing rooms.
It's the like housing such, Republican, Democrat, whoever gets elected will decide this is probably a big issue and change.
And there have been some really cool things, even like manufactured housing, because again, like Danielle was talking about in our ordinances, there was a misalignment of it had to be inspected in 2 different places where stick-built on site only had 1. And so there've been changes, that's just one example of making it easier, therefore lower cost for manufactured housing, which is still being made in Maine. It used to be huge, and now it's coming back and doing well. So
Okay,
there's been some good changes.
thanks. Sorry to take us down that
Nope. And I am grateful that you are here because it is so complex. And I
It is.
take notes wherever I can to absorb and understand what's going on. And I've been attending, the MOCA has been doing technical assistance workshops. I think it's like the first Wednesday of every month. So I've attended those
Great.
to educate myself and understand more what these are. But MOCA is the main office of community affairs.
There you
It's
go.
a new state department actually. And so it has housing in it, so the Housing Opportunity Program, HOP, which we actually were successful in getting a $15,000 grant from them to help fix these things in our ordinances, so we were successful there. I can't remember who else is under there, but it is brand new formed as of last year, and they're still pulling other offices.
Well,
into
and
it.
if I can say, what's cool about it, it is a new agency, but most of it is existing staff.
Yeah.
Any agency or department that does direct support to communities is now under one office, and they're located together. So you've got people who used to be in the Department of Marine Resources, who had direct community assistance for communities doing that. That program now sits next to the Housing Opportunity Program and the Municipal Planning Assistance Program. They're all sharing space with that whole cross-pollination idea of consistency. And there's one place where communities can go, and they're currently working on an online resource where you can say, this is where my town is, this is the help I need, who are the organizations that can help with that? And it'll pop up. So it's some really cool efficiencies in state government with putting people where it makes sense for the communities to have that first stop and for them to be able to talk.
Efficiency in state government.
Yes, it is.
40 years in
I'm
state-
happy to share.
40 years in state government is like efficiency, okay. Yep,
Stay hopeful, Pat. We're
And
staying
it's something
hopeful.
to celebrate because it is.
I'm
It's
awake, I'm not dreaming. Go on, yeah.
My gift to you this evening.
So anyway, so that is phase one that we're focused on, and then phase two is going to be looking at more complex issues, things that really do require more of a discussion around what policy decision we want to make. This will have a more robust public engagement process, and I'll give a sneak peek of what that looks like and what we're planning on for phase two in a little bit. But I wanted to give you an update on where we are with phase one. Here's the timeline that we're looking at. We're here, the April 6th council workshop. It's not really a workshop for the public, it's more of an informational session, kind of like how Twyla did TIF 101. It's more giving information about this project as a whole, and then teeing up that we will be looking for your feedback for phase two. We are on track to bring the revisions from the February 2nd draft to the planning board for them to adopt or recommend that council adopt at their May 6th meeting. And then we'll be bringing this entire project back to you for the June 15th meeting to adopt those revisions.
That's phase one.
That's phase one. Yep. So that's where we are with that. I also plan on coming to every workshop between now and June so that I can give you updates and answer any questions and get feedback from you. That's not the only way, so I'll have a slide showing how you can engage with the project more. Just a little bit more, again, this is the focus areas, the housekeeping actions that removed these outdated and conflicting languages, streamlined things, etc., and then ensuring we're in compliance with these land use and zoning ordinances. Okay, so this is what we've done so far. We started off in September with the consultant, and we had that first draft in early February. They are working on getting the feedback that we've given them into their next draft, which we should be seeing, I think, next week, actually. So they're moving very quickly on those things, which I think is a sign that we were giving them some good feedback, and we're also being very strict about the scope creep and making sure that we're staying within phase one boundaries and not kind of adding things at the last minute. For the past couple of months since I last saw you for this project, we have met with every department that has a chapter with amendments to make sure that they're aware what the amendments are and have been able to give their feedback to us. We've been doing the same thing with our boards and commissions. I just finished, we have one more. I'll be going to Board of Appeals to give them an update on the project at their next meeting. The March meeting was postponed, and so it's at the end of this month, so we'll be chatting with them and getting their feedback. I met with Harbor Commission. That was the last commission I met with last Wednesday. And Marina was at that meeting as well. It was a good discussion. I actually stayed for the whole meeting, beyond my part. They're an interesting bunch. I loved hearing about it. This has also been a really great, on a side note, has been a really great introduction to all the things that we do here in Ellsworth with all of the commissions. It's been a really great opportunity for me to meet people and hear how they do things. So I've been grateful for that project, this project for that. So the public engagement and adoption times I've mentioned. So in terms of communicating with the outside world, we do have a webpage that is dedicated to the project. You can find it on the city's website I think it's in the government tab. So that's all there, and so this presentation, the recording from the workshop, the recording from the workshop with the planning board in February, all of the information and all the resources we've put on this webpage, so it's easy access and we can be consistent about our messaging around it. We also created a dedicated email address to receive feedback, answer questions, all that stuff, and it's very simple. It's ordinance at, that's not right, I'll fix the slide. It's ordinance at ellsworthmaine.gov. So I'll fix that. This is also the email address we'll be using to collect feedback in phase 2. We're doing an informational session, workshop, whatever you want to call it, next week actually, April 14th. And then, you know this, we presented it at council workshops, and I've been providing this is the first part of providing updates, and we'll be continuing to do that. And again, May 6th is the drop dead date for planning board to keep us on schedule, and then the June 15th council meeting. This is a very high level view of what some of these amendments have been. In general, you can see on the left side, every chapter in our ordinance got this treatment of reading through for clarity and consistency and alignment with state laws, all of that kind of thing. Each amendment chapter has a note that has the dates that the section was amended or repealed. They've also renumbered things for consistency. And in general, there are 4 types of amendments that we'll see in this first phase. There are chapters they recommend repealing entirely, and I'll go into that. There are ones that just have very minor things like removing redundancies and standardizing the flow of the chapter so that everything's in the same order. And then we have a handful that have some more substantive changes. A lot of times they get the minor amendment treatment, but also had some additional law-related things that needed to be updated. So you'll see that in the Harbor chapter, for example. And then some other ones that have more major changes, obviously, are Chapter 56, our land use ordinance one, and Chapter 14 as well, because the processes for licenses and permits are actually housed in our new administrative chapter, so that it's all consistent the way we do applications. This is the only chapter tonight that I'll go into detail about, and this is the administration chapter. It is a new chapter. As we are now, Chapter 1 is just the city seal. So this will replace that chapter with its administration, and then that includes the city seal in it, so we don't lose that, of course. But it really sets the stage for the entire revision project. Some highlights of the articles that are in there. Article 2 really explains how the code is cited, consistency with the acronyms, how it should be interpreted, who interprets it, who enforces things. It really kind of delegates the authority, so to speak. There's also a unified fee schedule. So all of the fee schedules that were dotted throughout our ordinance are now in one place. And then Chapter 14 will have an appendix of just the license fees for easy use for the clerk's office. We listened to you, Sue.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And there's also a legal article that really consolidates all of the legal provisions from the entire, all of the nearly 70 chapters of our code into one place, so that it's easy to understand.
Does that include enforcement?
Yes, it does. Enforcement, waivers, appeals, all of that is all in one
That's
place
great.
now.
Do you have issues in other towns?
Oh, that's all over, yeah, I mean, all kinds of towns, different ordinances, you know. The nice thing about us is it's a unified ordinance, and you don't get the benefit unless you actually unify it like you guys are doing here. A lot of towns have unified ordinances where they just kind of pulled other ordinances and put it into one law.
That's kind of,
Like, this is a unified ordinance, and they're like, no, because different sections say one thing and then the other, so what you, I think it seems like at one point Ellsworth just threw everything together,
yeah.
and now we're like, okay, now we actually have to go through this all. But yeah, if anyone, for the city, and again, like if it's all just right there, you don't have to go searching in each separate section, that's huge. That's just make it way more efficient.
Defining all your terms up front, and how you organize it. I don't know, it's like, okay, I guess I'll read everything, and then I noticed that a lot when some of the red line versions, it was just like, so this is like contradictory, and you're like, nobody, even the subject matter experts in journalism, anybody know what this means? I was like, no idea, like,
Yeah.
Something that's been there for a long, long time,
Yeah.
doesn't need to be there anymore.
Yeah, so that is
But
such
then-
a,
But then you go to another section in the ordinances, and it says it's been repealed.
yes,
You
yes.
wasted 2 hours thumbing.
Yes. So that was a good tee up. Thank you so much. Because the chapters that are recommended for repealing primarily are ones that now are addressed in Chapter 1. So instead of having a singular chapter that defines the Office of Code Enforcement, that's all described in Chapter 1, where everyone else is described. Chapter 20, to your point, Pat, is a miscellaneous chapter that no one seems to understand what it's supposed to do, including the lawyers that looked at this. And apparently there was some penalty things in there that conflicted with state law and other chapters. So they're recommending that we repeal that one. I think it's a one-page chapter. And then, so on and so forth. So Chapter 26 is addressed in Chapter 1, so it doesn't need to be repeated elsewhere. The subdivision ordinance was a standalone chapter. It now lives in Article 7, which was our subdivisions chapter. So subdivisions were talked about in 2 separate places in our ordinance. Now they're in one place.
I remember that when I was on the planning board.
Yeah.
It was a mess.
Yep. Board of Appeals, so this one, we did not change any process or any flow related to the Board of Appeals. The only change in phase 1 that has happened is that there was an article in Chapter 56 that was specific to the Board of Appeals, and then there was a chapter for the Board of Appeals. So we took it out of Chapter 56 and put that language in the Board of Appeals chapter so it's all in one place. That's the only change, was just moving things around. Same thing, Chapter 65 is a weird one. Since I just had my meeting with Harbor Commission, they pointed out some interesting things that don't make this as clean to repeal, so we're likely going to keep it in there. I'm talking with the consultant to find out what our next steps are with that one. They had moved some of the language from the overnight mooring and anchorage control into Chapter 3. But Chapter 65 is specific to our great ponds, and the Harbor Commission does not really have jurisdiction over our great ponds. It's really specific to the harbor and to the Union River. And so it doesn't make sense to shove them all together in one chapter. So that'll likely be a discussion for phase 2 as to if we want to do any changes there. And then the Unified Building Ordinance, that is addressed in Chapter 1. So these are some examples. I don't want to take like the whole rest of our evening going through these things. I will absolutely share this presentation with you all, as well as posting it on the website. And I have a slide at the very end of this that addresses every chapter individually, what those changes were. These are the ones with the minor amendments. And as you can see, chapters 57 through 66, which are everything after chapter 56, also were reviewed with the same lens. And then these are the ones with substantive amendments. They got the minor amendment treatment, but there was some additional clarification and reorganization that really needed to happen for ease of readability, and then also just some standards to make things consistent with state law, et cetera. I feel like a broken record. We need to be in compliance. And so the ones that have kind of that orangey yellow block around them, those are the ones that really had some more significant amendments to them, as we have discussed tonight. Next steps, moving on to phase 2. Some of our early identified goals for phase 2 are looking at individual chapter amendments or gaps and seeing about fixing them. I know, for example, chapter 4 is fire protection, and Scott had been working on something, so we want to make sure that all of his amendments were kind of fit into the process. Chapter 43, which deals with trees, there are also some amendments that likely need to happen in that one, and I've gotten a document from the Arbor Commission about that already. There are also some more complex policy issues that we need more time, and we want to make sure that we do it right, and I don't want to just shove amendments through. So I really want to make sure we take our time with those additional ones. And then we have a lot of outdated chapters. So I just pulled out one. I don't want to offend anyone if they really love chapter 29, but this one has not been touched since 1976 that I can find. And if you click on it on our city's website, it is literally a scan of a typewritten document. Or they used like Times New Roman for it, but I'm pretty sure it's a scan. And so we're not quite sure. It hasn't been touched since before I was born. Does it still work for Ellsworth now and moving forward? So I want to have those conversations, and instead of just saying, this is old, we don't want to deal with this anymore. So I want to be really smart about this. I will also note that phase 2 is going to be primarily staff-led. It'll take a little bit longer than phase 1, but it will be primarily staff-led. And then some of the amendments related to land use ordinance, we will have to pull in a consultant to help us with that one. So coming down the main stretch here, so in the next 3 months, these are the things that we are going to be doing with phase 2. Some of them I've already started and they're almost finished. That's summarizing the feedback from all of the people that we've talked to for phase 1. Looking at the comp plan and looking at every single action item that have been identified as ordinance reform and seeing if they've been addressed already in phase 1 and what more needs to be done. And then the next after that is any sort of additional feedback or other action items and outdated chapters, like I said. And then the next 6 months, most of the cities that I have looked at for ordinance examples in Maine use E-code, which is a digitized version of their ordinances that connect to one another, rather than them being individual PDFs on a website. And so I haven't started costing out what that is because they're pretty proprietary about that. You have to engage with their salesperson. But the professional access for it is $145 a month. So that ends up being $1,500 to be able to maintain easily our ordinances, and it has a library that you can pull example ordinances. So say we want to investigate e-bikes and see what we want to do about that, we can get examples from other customers of E-code. So I want to explore the migration, find out how much it costs, if it is a benefit for our city or not.
I would just say, my experience, that more and more towns and cities are using E-code, and once you get familiar with how it operates, it's much easier for someone to engage with electronically.
Yeah.
And there's like a search function, and so obviously cost is important, but it's.
To avoid Pat's story, spending 2 hours thinking you've now understood your thing, but there's a link that lets you now know you don't have to drag it to this section.
Exactly.
Time is money.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so and
Yeah.
I think that's from the city side, but also from the developer or the public. It's just, and there's more and more cities and towns are using it more and more.
Yeah, like just for a property owner to understand what they can do on their land.
To your point of like seeing a scanned document, we saw that with the cemetery commission and some of their stuff on this. Like, hey, here's the policy of a scan. Oh, there we go.
Okay, I brought it up to share. This is the cemetery commission ordinance. It is typewritten. You can see there was a misspelling, so they just took a pen and fixed the thing. I've already shared with Danielle, the cemetery
Back when you was
commission.
in grammar school.
The cemetery commission, it's not a red pen. Cemetery commission is eager to have this updated and in compliance with state law. Danielle mentioned it's not part of phase one,
Right.
so we may be looking for other ways, maybe MMA. There's a lot of, we're getting very good at researching what other towns are doing. But yeah, when it starts out being typewritten, you know you're in trouble.
Why did you leave that out if it wasn't up to date with state law for the
I
cemetery?
don't think it was identified as one of the ones that needed the most work.
Oh.
But it's definitely on our list for phase two.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there's also like our water protection ordinance, that needs a lot of work, and that wasn't, like, it got the treatment of everything else, so at least we know, like, it gave us clarity on what is actually saying, but that one needs additional work as well. Yeah. I am gonna come see you guys every 3 months, so get used to the space. I do wanna make sure that I'm giving you all of the updates and also giving you a status of the amendments that we have in progress and then what we're recommending for the next amendment cycle, so that like we're looking to you to prioritize what we're gonna look at in the next kind of cycle. So you'll be hearing from me a lot, obviously more public information sessions, and I also want to create an ordinance committee to help guide this. So that it's not just me coming to you. I really want more expansion of the public engagement. And that's what I have for tonight.
Cool.
Something to think about. We saw a presentation about a new logo for Ellsworth being a friendly city. What would it take to change code enforcement's name to code compliance?
We can certainly discuss it and see. I haven't seen that in any other city, so
It just,
yeah.
it just has
Yeah.
that negative code
Sure.
compliance is really what you're after.
I like CPO as opposed
Oh,
to code compliance.
Interesting, yeah.
Don't go
CCO.
skipping down the bunny trail, because next year we're gonna do something about law enforcement.
I actually like.
Compliance.
Code
I think,
compliance,
yeah,
I think,
compliance
sends
makes.
really, isn't that the goal, is
Yeah, it is, it
become
is.
compliant?
Yeah, CCO, I like that better than CEO. It's the only, just I'm always trying to.
Maybe there's many,
I think the negative would be like, just, it's not a term in common usage, so it's like, I put on our applications, because I'm gonna like, hey, the deputy city manager is also the chief operating officer, because that type of role, but I wouldn't call the chief operating officer Ellsworth, what role is that?
Yeah.
In the city, that's not the current term in common usage. That seems like a small thing, to your point, on
I-
signal that, hey, it's code compliance, we don't really consider.
it just sends a better message.
Mm.
It sends a better- And maybe there's 4 knives that can kill that idea, you know, maybe there's repercussions every cause has a reaction, so. But
Still worth looking into.
Yeah,
I think it just,
user friendly, be
it
nice.
sends a better message.
Code friendly.
I don't know if you met those guys up there. I'm just kidding, they're wonderful, so.
I'm happy to see that you're putting, that you're already planning on a lot of public engagement for round 2 and even in round 1. But I do think that the public will want to participate for sure in this round 2 with the updates and everything.
Yes,
So,
yes, yeah.
that's wonderful.
Yeah, and we recently caught that Bar Harbor is doing some engagement around their ordinances as well, and the way they've set it up is more like subject matter, so it's like, are you interested in natural resources? Do you wanna have influence on this? So addressing it in kind of things that are in alignment with one another. So we're kind of keeping an eye on what they're doing.
And, I think, to me, there's an importance, you want to have an engagement in the process, but we also want to move quickly on the pieces that are of, could be of most importance, and sending signals to the development community that we are business friendly and that we are housing friendly. I think we talked about the other piece, and some of those are going to be tough political and are very much a policy decision of the city council, and the staff needs to provide draft zoning board of appeals and limiting the scope, so that they don't have appeal authority over larger housing initiatives that have been approved by the planning board, is something I think is worthy of consideration, so that we don't have happen what recently happened with the zoning board of appeals and delayed processes, mistaken pieces, especially when your planning board is so subject matter expert on this. But there's issues with local control on that. In the sort of traditional role of the zoning board of appeal, I think you heard from the consultant last time around that had a time and a place for some of these bigger projects, but nowadays, every citizen, because it's so easy just to put that, it's going to Superior Court anyways, no matter what way the zoning board of appeal rules. It's either gonna be because the city's gonna sue, or the citizen or group who didn't receive the ruling they wanted, so it just delays project and housing by years. And there's a bunch of other pieces like this that, if you really want to streamline housing, be like, we are housing friendly and city Ellsworth and developer friendly, that are gonna take trade-offs on, how can we maybe package up some of those at the front end, so that they don't get lost in a year and a half, because the housing issue is so important. We just got an application in for a CDBG grant, maybe we'll get it, maybe we won't, but to me, in my opinion, from a policy area, that's the area where I get the most citizen, what do you do about housing? I know there's short-term rentals we're gonna start discussing soon, but that kind of, those issues I think can come to the front of us. Is there a change that we can make in that could promote more housing, more developers holding housing here? But, do we have an exemption for permit fees if you build housing? If you build housing over a threshold, it might not be a huge amount of money, but it sends another signal to the developer community housing that like, come through our door. If you're gonna build housing, you don't have to pay for, we want that activity so bad that we'll give you some white glove service to get you through are there process changes we can change with our, like the charrettes, if they call it, where you just, hey, if you're gonna build a housing development this size, we will do 2-3 meetings a month with our planning board to get that project over the line so that you can get to yes. And if we can shorten the time cycles of these developers, then we can save money on that. I think that's really important.
That's one of, just an example of a very minor thing that we did in the ordinance is, typically applications that'll go before planning board are due 21 days before the meeting. And we've bumped it to 28 days before the meeting to give us more time to talk with the developer and make sure that everything is ready for planning board. So planning board does have the ability to actually kind of fast track things to a final stage if everything is in the application and good to go with them. And that's an opportunity to make the process go faster by giving us more time for the internal review and the talking with the developer and more time for them to give revisions to us. They're better set up for when they go before planning board. So it's just like minor things like that we're hoping will make a big difference in the future. And I've talked to some other towns who have done similar things and they said that it did make a difference. So just very minor process tweaks like that.
There's also some stranger things we could consider, which I think should also be considered. What if we're just turning the city council into having some kind of fine court authority type structures where, a lot of times we come into an issue where a citizen comes and means that, hey, this is outrageous, so-and-so's, we saw this a few times, they're letting chickens, or there's a rooster, and it's against the ordinance, or this, and like our option is letters, and then building a case of letters that we get responded, and don't respond to, and more respond time for our offices, and then the final letters are letters to the judicial system. We recently had one of those. Being organics, and then we're in a judicial process. It can take a very long time, and for these citizens on the other end, it's like this, they're just in like another world with lack of compliance. There could be a consideration where they call it like a non-appeal authority or something like that.
Quasi-judicial. Planning board, it has that role right now.
So the council could essentially be, if you don't respond to our letters, it's kind of like a says that we will be required to appear before the city council this date. If you don't, then we can start levying our own fines that we've been there. And that's very new and a very different process. That's something that didn't need to do immediately now.
Phase 3, Charlie.
Phase 3.
Phase 3.
And that is that we did
We'd
talk
have
about
to
that.
ask the Kings down in the Justice Commission.
When it's home rule, we can do what we want. No, I'm just kidding. And then, oh, I had a thought and I just left the station, so I'm not gonna waste your time in trying to remember what it was, so anyway.
Well, I'd say also.
Oh, I do remember it. So one of the really big benefits that I'm seeing from a project like this is that we are spending less time trying to understand our own ordinances because we have clarity, and we'll be able to actually focus on the things that are coming and really get ready for that. So one of the things Tabitha emailed me today about the data centers, and I know at the state level,
Working
they've
on that too.
I know.
yeah, there's a moratorium through 27, but having things cleaned up gives us the ability to focus on, do we need to get ahead of this?
That's, if it
that's
passes,
the
that's the
idea.
point of the moratorium, is
Yeah.
give the towns a
Yeah.
chance to have a say in what's coming and what it's like.
Yep, so that's like an example of one of the great benefits to this project, so. Anywho, I'm done. Thank you so much for your time
Thank you.
tonight.
Seeing Danielle's praises, she also secured a $15,000 grant to help with our ordinance in the States. And that's-
Unmatched, we don't have to ask for the reimbursement, they already, it's not in our
Yeah,
coffers
yeah.
yet, but we sent them an invoice, so.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
And I really like the eco piece. I know it's not this budget cycle, but probably next one. I put that in the kind of some of the digital stuff. It's just so much more efficient and helpful that it's a cost we're gonna have to bear. This isn't a cycle for any new stuff. On to procurement.
Policy, Charlie.
So I have the memo that I kind of breezed through this in the city council meeting on procurement. Because I'm looking like it was gonna be a long night, and this was really just more of an update. But Danielle actually, in addition to being on that project, she's on a project with me on our ordinance reform.
Okay.
Um,
Charlie, you want that?
Yeah. Check this one. But myself, Leah from our finance department, we are, it's one of the things I think is most surprising after I saw the state shape the budget was in was, our procurement policy and procedure, but also like the system we do with procurement. It's like, the city has received a lot of growth, and the processes for kind of managing all the procurement we do is really important. But without a system for it, it's essentially a bunch of shared emails over the last 2 years that I've been here, and 10 before that, and we rewrite the same procurement over and over and over, even if it's the year of, because the person, half 50% of the staff turnover. So you have a human-based system for procurement. You have human-based problems when those systems go away. I was thinking about this, and if somebody were to ask right now, what are the last 2 years of procurements that we've done here, like the public records request, then I'd have to tell them that it's going to cost you a lot of money, because it's going to be an enormous research project for me to figure all those things out, and it shouldn't be, and that's a tragedy that it is. But I think that's why even halfway through the budget year, it was like we have to figure out a system for this. There's no way it's going to continue to plague us and make it look, as if something nefarious is going on. And that is, to me, the worst thing about trust in government is we need a process that's unbreakable, auditable, trackable, and just more efficient over time. So we've been working really hard. We're on 2 meetings a week with OpenGov on this process, and we've done 2 staff trainings already. We actually have a new system that's live on the website already where vendors can sign up. We've put forward our first request for proposals into the system for line striping, and that'll be, we're kind of allowing in the near term for people to do online and the old-fashioned mail-in the quote if you'd like to, and then we're going to figure out a process. Tomorrow is the first opening of one of those quotes, so we'll go into the system. There was one that arrived. The majority arrived via the online process. The one that arrived via mail. So for the near term, we'll have a process where we'll open it up when it's here, record it, and then we'll also have somebody go to the system and then switch to the open bid, and then it'll populate them all at the same time, we'll leave those price points out. But it was another thing where, you know, today I was like, hey, have we notified Steve and the council of the bid thing? Like, oh no, like, and it's just, like, it's not, I'm not trying to keep this from the councilors. It's just everybody's so freaking busy around here, that it gets dropped. And then Steve will get upset about it, he'll email me about it, I'll say I'm trying to hide things from people. And then, you know, the city looks bad. It hurts me every single time because it's never the intent of this. It's always, and a system like this will mitigate that going forward. But we have to set up the logic in the system so that it's, you know, it is of the council's wishes and they can have trust and faith that it's, you know, this is the process it's going towards. And, you know, right now we have a master services and contracting agreement. We didn't have that before in any of our bids. So now with the lawyers, there'll be a master contract agreement because it's not just procurement, it's also in how we do each of our contracts. The line striping bid was kind of a version of last time around, and we had some people that pointed out some mistakes, but that all now gets tracked. We put people into the system. You have to log in, ask questions. It's in the system, it's tracked. Everybody can see the questions that get asked, so you can have a ton of transparency. We've been in that position in the past year. Like, hey, I talked to so-and-so on the phone, and like, and I talked to, and it creates this illusion of like, we had it happen this time, and somebody said, hey, I saw this thing, should we change? I said, please put it, I think that's a good question, please put it in the system so that everybody can see it. And moving forward, we're just going to go to really much more of an online, trackable system for this.
How would this process change what we just heard, that we didn't have an RFP for the fire truck?
So that's actually point number one, use of cooperative purchasing contracts. If you want to go to the key areas for council discussion, it's on the second page. So, you know, municipal procurement often allows municipalities to piggyback onto existing competitive bid contracts through purchasing organizations. It's currently mentioned in our procurement policy that's an allowable use not to have to do an RFP, especially for things that are more like we need to purchase X type of piece of equipment. We saw that with the Ventrac, which came in well under what we've done previous RFP for. These are larger cooperative purchases. Sourcewell is one of the big companies, Verisoft's another big company. Can't remember the name of it offhand, but there's like another version of this that's like an Amazon for government services. And it's like, hey, I want to buy these types of things. Like, you know, we're not we're buying a specific type of thing as opposed to like, you know, it makes sense. You're getting the benefit of buying something that's scaled and a lot of governments are buying.
So with the state procurement process, they would put out bids, solicit bids from vendors, okay? Let's say cleaning supplies. And we had certain contractors in certain areas, wherever your agency was, this is where you could buy it. This is their approved vendor list, basically. And they're supposed to give us, they're supposed to give you the lowest price. So you don't run to Walmart getting something or Rennie's. You're pretty much locked into having to go get stuff at a certain place.
Yeah, and that's a, you know, I worked in state government, you know, it's kind of the efficiency of scale. We had a whole office of supply diversity. They had to go through that process. They had to get checked, you know, 10 ways from Sunday. They had to certify that they were going to sell, if you're this type of government this size, if you're this type of this size, like this is what your price point is going to be. So you can kind of get the efficiencies of, you know, talking about the open up folks like, so who's your intake officer? You know, there are cities and towns, and Ellsworth's getting there, or you could, it would be lovely if we just had one person that was in finance, and all they did was all the procurements. Like, we didn't have any of our department heads touch a procurement as opposed, except for saying, like, you know, Scott would have come to somebody in finance and said, hey, I want to buy a truck. I think it's super important, it's number one on the council list, they've asked for it. That person would now be like, okay, I'm going to go and look into cooperative purchasing. Maybe that's not available through cooperative purchasing. Let's, you know, let's think about an RFP internally now. Can we work with other folks? And then they can kind of ask questions. Unfortunately, I don't think for some time in budget constraints and due to that, we're not going to be able to get to that level.
Well, and to be clear, that doesn't take away the fire truck committee.
No.
That the committee develops the criteria and then works with finance.
But we wouldn't have had them directly talking to be like, hey,
Right.
do a competitive purchase, look at Sourcewell, if you want to go, if not, if you're not going to be able to do it through competitive purchase, you're going to have to RFP it. I'm not going to, it's not a Sourcewell.
And the only thing about putting the fire truck out for bid is you leave out the proprietary name. So anything that you want with that, you could specify that the engine has to be so many horsepower.
Right.
It has to be compliant with this and this and this. Pretty much, you're gonna get comments anyways. Okay, Caterpillar doesn't meet clean air standards. They don't put engines in trucks. But you wouldn't, if you wanted to Pierce, you couldn't put that down. You see what I mean?
Yeah, and I think the danger here, there's I think two, and there'd probably be more, but the pros I've sort of talked about here, you're piggybacking on the system, you're getting the best price based on the other things. The state actually has a huge list that they allow municipalities to piggyback onto. I think that's very helpful, and also just process-wise, like, you know, on staff, and you see the mistakes that happen, that are honest mistakes, but so kind of de-risk that side of it. The flip side, and I think it can be mitigated somewhat, is, you know, the Volvo, right, for the excavator. You know, okay, so-and-so just loves the Volvo, they want the Volvo, it's the fancy one, it's the this, like, I'm gonna source one procurement, but like, okay, well, what if there was a Mitsubishi ride? And who cares if you like that Volvo one, I wanna see the full, you know, amount of them, so you really should just be doing specs and not trying to buy that specific thing, because you might come with it with certain subjectivities that would make you buy it more expensive, even though it's the cheapest of those most expensive on a larger contract. I kind of feel like, well, if you get something like this from the fire department, you know, you feel like that's mitigated somewhat, right? Hey, we've looked at all the options on Sourcewell on this piece. These are the areas. And I feel like we can bake that into the, if you use cooperative purchasing, you must do these steps in order to show that you've, like, you know, the X, Y, and Z, and you know, further along down here, there's a whole, you know, a whole process of like, here's how the bid will be going, here's how the evaluation will work, here's the logic of the system. And Leia, you know, even though we're not gonna have an intake, you know, Leia is gonna take a little more from finance active role in the procurement, and she, you know, she's gonna review these things and be like, hey, you're trying to use cooperative purchasing, well, I'm seeing in your piece here that like you have no other information or any other item that you looked at. That's not, that doesn't follow our policy for cooperative purchasing or why you're doing it. The other pieces I think would be local bidding on these projects. So, you know, if it is going to go to, you know, most of these cooperative purchasing is not through a local vendor here. Now again, that's not currently in our procurement policy, is to have that be the case, to use local vendors, but you know, they're not going to get whatever, you know, their fees on that for being a local provider of that service. So let's say this fire truck, if there had been a fire truck operator here in Ellsworth, and you know, it was $50,000 more for the one out of Bangor, you know, but this fire truck distributor dealership in Ellsworth is here. You know, if you're using cooperative purchase, you're kind of just, you're not going to be able to use that. I think that's another negative part of the cooperative purchasing piece.
We can encourage our local vendors to get on to this, correct?
Yeah, you can, and I think that's the,
We have somebody that's doing, that we think will do that in the city, or just reach out to all of our,
It's been posted on our socials. I don't think, we don't have a vendor list, really, to do that, and it's kind of similar, I think. We just don't want to seem like we're inviting particular ones. So that's why we're kind of having this year to do this hybrid, so that we can encourage and have one-on-one conversations, and offer trainings at every opportunity. For every RFP, offer a training of how to log on and get on.
yeah, I think that's kind of, for the cooperative purchasing, especially like if we had our own internal office of supply diversity, we're doing that, that's when we kind of, but for our vendor recruitment here, it's more from like outside the cooperative purchasing.
It's like, we were gonna build some stuff, veteran cemetery, state cemetery. And I needed building materials. So, my supervisor, new superintendent of cemetery, well, I'll just go down to Jefferson and get it from this place here. And it's like, wait a minute, we gotta check to see if they're on the approved vendor list. And it's like, wow, this is neat. They listed out Hammond Lumber, you know, a whole bunch of them, but a place down in Jefferson wasn't on the list. You can't buy it from them. You see what I mean? You could buy lumber from Viking, EBS at the time, Hammond Lumber, Ware Butler. Couldn't buy it. We could not buy it from Kennebec Lumber Supply. We couldn't buy it from McCormick. We couldn't buy it, you know.
I wonder, on that note, for local vendors, if there's, you know, a way to like, I don't know if you've already done it, like compile the list of every local business vendor that we've worked with, and then have them reach out and say, hey, you know, not just them, I feel like any business, or like, say, hey, Ellsworth businesses, we're having a informational session / training for any business that thinks they might want to, you know, provide services or, you know, goods to the city, and just make that, you know, get it out, maybe even, you know, work, get it in the paper, beyond, just, you know, get as much coverage as we can, so.
Work with the chamber.
We could definitely run a
Chamber,
list
yeah.
from Cassell
And-
of all the local vendors that we've paid. That wouldn't be a hard, I don't think it would be hard as long as there's, you know, up-to-date contact information. I just think it would be, you know, pretty time-consuming to compile it all, but I think we could probably do that, over the next couple months.
Yeah, I think there's kind of a natural, I mean, we already put it out on social media and let people know that, hey, here's the new vendor sign-up portal. I think over time, this is kind of the beauty of having a system for this is, you know, going forward, if you are a vendor with us, now you're in the system. You're required to be, and you're gonna have to have your insurance on file, we'll have a contract for you, and all those things are there, and then you subscribe to the system, and any, you know, procurement we ever do now, you just click a box and you'll always be distributed out to it. So over time, but you're right, at the front end, a little bit of a, we've already started a bit, but how do we take some of our procurement? So we have, like, here's our full vendor list of all of our categories, and also over time, like, we just start acquiring our whole procurement list. So like the line paint striping is a great example. We made some edits, there were some questions on it, it's in there. Next year when we put it out, boom, bring up last year's line painting, the
It
questions
cleans
that
up
got done.
everything when it comes to the finance committee, because you look down through the warrants, and we get both copies, whether it's by department or it's just where the purchases land. And it's pretty easy to figure out which one's buying what. But
Yeah, and I think the, on that too, before we switch to the next couple sections here, so I didn't want to go through more, some of them I think will be pretty easy. But you pointed out the kind of, you know, warrant, and I think there's also another area too where it's like, hey, we need to procure that. Like, that might not be $50,000 at a clip, but you bought that chemical, you know, X amount of times, that's, you know, $197,000 over the full year. Like, have you put that out to procurement? Maybe there's only one vendor for it. Maybe it's just the group that's been there the whole time, but you can, and then you can set a 3-year, however long you want that.
and you'll be able to budget for it, so that it's not like, oh.
And besides staff time, this is our most expensive thing. We are a
Yeah.
pass-through entity for going, so we want to get the best price on every single thing. But if we don't have a system that can really kind of monitor and then trigger, hey, you got a contract coming up, you better look at this. Talk about the bus garages and leasing situation. Oh, the lease is coming up. Like if we had a system that managed our contracts, because it's procurement and contracting. You know, we would have had, hey, a lease is coming up both in this area and this area. You should start looking at it now. We have more time for the public input process. We get more time so people don't feel as rushed. And I think across the board, they'll just, and then also doesn't rely on the people that were there for so long, you know, as the person, oh yeah, this is coming up soon, it's just, they'll just kick it out, they'll actually,
Charlie, we've got 7:45.
so, the local businesses legal compliance, I think, is the other piece here. You know, I think that's mentioned a few times, and we want to support local. I did find out this is legal, state, it's actually illegal, you could violate the Interstate Commerce Act, so states can't prejudice Maine companies over non-Maine companies. Cities can, that doesn't necessarily mean you should. So, you know, like, what is the threshold that I say, like, we're gonna buy from an Ellsworth company, is it $10,000 more than the other? Is it 5,000? Is it project specific? To me, it does invite like a little bit more scrutiny, and then we can get sued on if we were fair or not. To me, there's like almost like a tiebreaker role that they could play here for local. It's like, hey, if everything else is equal, you know, I'm going with the local group, or it's kind of handled through. Really, I think we're going to be in the RFP versus the RFB process for a lot of these pieces, and an evaluation committee. I think that's what, and like the vendor relationship. You can have preferred vendors. Who are, hey, we really like working with these folks. We really think it's not just the price that we want to go with these folks at, but they're a good operator. Their service is right next to us. We don't want to go with the places elsewhere. So if you have a really objective hiring committee of multiple people, you can kind of mitigate that, hey, you just gave a good deal to a local Ellsworth person because they greased the wheels in the back end, and that's why you gave them the smoking, or you paid more for that than others. So I feel like that's where I'd like to keep the local compliance, is it's like a tiebreaker, or like the local, their preferred vendor for the city, having a long-standing relationship, you know, and it's price competitive, which could be taken into consideration by the local scoring committee, so that it's justifiable if we get sued for it. The procurement approval thresholds.
Which number are you?
3. You know, Sue Lassard, Bucksport Team Manager, who's helping us out in she's actually getting us up to date on our audit stuff right now. She's was recommending that we should upgrade the purchases over 15,000 to go to City Council. This is also something that the people who applied for the deputy city manager meant, were just like, wow, the council was really involved in some small decisions here. And as I kind of noted in here that, like, I think after we've had this system for a while, and if council can have a lot more trust in the community, that like the procurement system is, and the evaluation committees are really mitigating a lot of that, then we can think about going above the 15,000 piece. If it's approved in the budget cycle, if it's gone through procurement, sure, maybe we can go to 25 or 50,000. But at this time, until something's baked, I think we'll just keep it at the, it's over $15,000, even if we talked about it in the budget cycle, gotta come to city council, it takes a little longer, but, you know, that's, no changes at this point. Council notification of bid openings and awards, is a big one, you know, as you probably see, you know, I don't, talk to councilors about bids or RFPs, none of you. You know, it's to keep the objectivity. You guys are there to vote on these items, staff review it, and you know, once we get these together, it's your decision to kind of quiz us, and if you feel like you have the information, if you think it's a good idea, if you don't think it's a good idea. But you know, there are, if it was just a bid, and we do mostly RFPs, not RFBs here, because there's an evaluation committee, it's not just necessarily the price, but the quality of what we're getting, the liability of the firm, there's a bunch of other things that these committees evaluate. And then how this goes to council for bid openings and awards. Oftentimes, like the packets, you know, 300 pages long. We saw that with the school. I think it was a track piece, and just it wasn't intentional why they didn't add it to the packet, but it's like, how we're going to have so much materials. This process with having it all be digital online will enable it just press the button and distribute the council packets. To me, I'd like to have pretty specific guidance and maybe like some council sign off though, that on like what that means. I'm not sharing if it's a request for proposal. This is not. This is subject to negotiation. This is and that I would like it so that when those things finalize, that it gets distributed all out to council, at the same time, so you all are looking at the same information at the exact same time, but then also there's specific rules on, how that information can be shared and can't be talked about publicly that would be agreed to as well. So it doesn't open us up to liability or prejudice in the process. That's kind of my hope with that system. It's just, we'll design the logic in the system so when the bid's finalized, you guys will get all the packets for everybody who submitted anything. You're required to know that you won't be able to talk in detail about specific aspects, and if there's questions, ask me or our legal counsel. I've gotten to that before, which is I tried to write a public memo on something recently on this, and our lawyer said, we can't talk about it, we're still in negotiation. So that's where it gets a little bit trickier on that, but I'd like to streamline that so the council has all the packet information as soon as it's open at the same time. Pre-solicitation market research as well, RFIs, this is another kind of discussion point I've had with legal on just, there may be times where, hey, how much does this cost? Where are we at? I want to just get a ballpark figure if this is something that I should go through this ginormous process, all to get to the end of the line where it's just like, nobody's really even willing to do that in the area. We know local vendors and other pieces, and just getting a little bit more designed on a process, which this doesn't exist at all in our current procurement, on like how that should be guided. So that staff know, here's the rules on pre-market solicitation market research. Talk to folks as much as you want, but as soon as we go out to RFP, it's done. Nobody talks to anybody anymore, and if they ask you any questions about it, tell them to go online, put a question in the system, so that everybody in the system can see what the question is until it closes, because it's another trip up here that I can understand a long time ago, just keep calling around and ask the questions, but we gotta, the integrity of the system is paramount, especially if it gets into a lawsuit, so we gotta just make sure that that's there and that people know what the pre-market research RFP is. Talked about the intake a bit. Council role in the process as well, we talked about that. On the importance of remaining objective during these processes and working through myself as a city manager when we have questions as opposed to bidders themselves, I think is important. Or not, if we don't want that to be the case and we want councilors to be able to talk to any bidder they would like during an RFP process and start doing their own discussions, that's the desire of the council in our procurement policy, please let me know that and I can make that into the policy. But staff take a lot of time and work to make it as objective as possible, and it can be difficult if there's cross communication, especially with the RFPs. Again, pre-market solicitation, same kind of thing. Hey, I think this is a good idea, but and we need to be maybe better on like this is out for bid, this is out for this is what the process is going to be. But really important, especially with your role in voting on these things, that you're getting all the information at the same time and can have an objective yes or no. There's a bunch more in here I'll let you read later on just kind of the process workflows we're working on. An enormous project planner with so many to-dos on it, you couldn't imagine. Thank you to Leah and Danielle. Sarah's on a lot of the Open Gov asset management systems with the water department things, and Parks and Rec, which will probably move forward. Soon, thank you. I just gave you questions. One of the other nice things here.
I saw that. Thank you very much.
Sure. Pat asked about it today. Like, what's the process of that, of the realtors looking out for, selling surplus city properties? Sue put that in the system. She's our second person to put it in there. It was my fault, Pat. I hadn't given edits to it yet. So it actually didn't. No, thank you. And I went in the system, gave my comments on adding a few areas. Sue and I had talked last week. I'm like, how are we going to score this one? Like, what if 5 locals come in and they're good realtors? Like, do we lottery it? But I think Sue got some good information together on like, we can't have an evaluation committee, maybe how they market it can be scored, what their fee structure is can be scored. And then maybe if it does come down to like, there's 3, there probably is a way we can just do a simple lottery for
3, if we get 3 local realtors, maybe we could formulate that, and one possibility is give them all a piece of the pie. Because, like I said, you're probably still working on the list of properties. Because I know that there's a bunch of them.
Yeah, I've got all the.
And you're doing a great job at it. I know you are. It's very tedious.
Yeah, I've got, I believe, all the foreclosed properties
Mhm.
that we know of. But now what I'm doing is going through all of our other properties to see how we came about getting them. They're ones that we've had for a while, and unfortunately with this new law, it doesn't matter when we got it. If it was foreclosed on, then we need to find the prior owner and do that whole deal, but
That, yeah, but the thing is we start getting it back on.
Yep. Yep.
And as long as the overage goes back to,
Yep.
so that we're right with the state and right with doing the right thing. You know what I mean? Get property back on tax roll so that we're not spending, maybe the money's.
We love it. It should be our second RFP in the system. So, and as part of this too is like not just we want to get more bids on these things. We have so many just like single bids and not a lot of information. So how can we use some of these larger cooperative purchasing contracts to get some good prices if we're not getting good bids? How can we make it easier for people to bid? I think that would be helpful. Take a quick, if you don't mind, Patrick, I'll kind of fast track a few of these.
Yeah. We got 4 minutes.
4 minutes. Demire Field is easy. It's just a notice that Rotary is doing their stage 2 of their Demire Field upgrades. We had a nice big presentation of that a while back in council, before this new council. We did all the new slides and new pieces. One councilor had a question on if it's going to be similar stuff we were thinking in Bolton, so we're working on that. But we're doing some parking lot changes, the field's getting repaired, some fencing pieces, and Rave's looking at $80,000 for the project, so I think we're trying to like 120, 140. It's just, the roadie just comes in, and one of the only groups that's not looking for anything. They're just here to update me on awesome stuff they're doing. The city's technically the owner of that place, and we do a lot of maintenance there, but the Rotary has birthed this concept, I think, for like the 1950s or something, to have that put together. And we're fortunate to have a really active Rotary that's not just going a long time ago, but is keeping up with it and doing incredible things.
Charlie, is it one Rotary club and you have your choice of which meetings you attend, or are they two Rotary clubs?
Two separate. There's the noontime and the evening Rotary.
So which Rotary club is doing the
This
two
is
items?
the evening room?
I think so.
And the noontime one is doing, they just actually put out some requests for proposals for grants and for some upgrades, which we put an application for some Milton Park things. So yeah, so it's two great Rotaries.
A little competitive between the Rotary clubs is great. It's wonderful, both sides of it is great.
And well, Moose Lodge is helping out too, right? They want to do some stuff, so that's great. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Volunteers are awesome. Give them a little bit of food, give them a certificate.
Yeah.
And some city bling
Oh,
now, we got some.
That's what I used to do to the Marine Corps League when they come over to the Veteran Cemetery in Lowell.
In terms of next, just a little preview of the agenda for 2 weeks from now. We have Sarah in the seat. I'm going to join on Teams. We've got a vacation during school vacation week. Some great it's Volunteer Appreciation Month, and so we had some great volunteer awards for some local citizens and businesses, and the Milton Park's coming back. It was kind of our unfinished business. Roddy's talked to legal and some other folks just about that project, and there were some questions on what this would obligate us to, so I'll have some answers there. We'll move forward on that. There is, it's just the renewal licenses, those are usually pretty straightforward. There is a new business one in Ellsworth, MV, doing business as Enville.
Who is that?
This appears to be the Marijuanaville's rebrand and sort of request for a new license, and the city council denied that request. And they're operating as Marijuanaville, same location with Boss Lady Genetics, which was the previous licensee. The owner of that property, I believe that license runs out at the end of June, so I will leave the council. I'll try to get an attorney position on if this changes anything for you all, and leave it to the council on I think that this name change or any other aspects of this request for a license changes previous decisions. Then on the other side of that, we have the cannabis overlay zone, and we've talked pretty extensively on that. I don't anticipate a lot there. Sale of a vacant-owned lot land, that's a city-owned piece, it's not part of the ones that goes to RFP, so Sue will come with some discussion on that. We have a couple items that are relative to the audit finding that we were over budget in previous areas in previous years, and there wasn't reallocations within the budget cycle. So I've noticed that there was, during this budget season, there was a few overages. Some of them are totally unpredictable on, I think it's solar credits, so a lot of people are over on their power. A lot of people are over on legal line items. That's including the city council's legal line item. I think in some ways that's, this year we went from having a master legal fee across the board that was variable to trying to portion that into each of the departments. And some people have like $0 or $200 they use legal, and some are over. So this is in some ways right sizing that. But a few of the areas, there were some unbudgeted things that came in, they're likely to be over. Want to pull from some reserve accounts and then look to pay back those reserve accounts so that it's it's penciled over in the budget cycle that the overage happened, and we don't have that audit funding to contend with in years from now and this cycle. With the long line striping concept, again, we'll open that proposal tomorrow. This evaluation committee will go to work on that. It's going to be a little clunky in the near term as I'm working on the logic for how those distributions go out to council. So if I can figure it out so we can just have it all be sent in an email at the same time through the system, awesome. We got one that's paper-based, and we input that, but just bear with me for a little while while I try to figure out a more uniform process for distributing the evaluation committee's requests. And that's all, like, all the scoring happens in here, all the questions, it even keeps a track of all the questions that I just asked Sue on. Should this be here, should this be there? So we'll have discussion.
Just a little note on that, the last two contracts that the city of Ellsworth has given for line striping was never disclosed to the council that they were city employees that were awarded the contracts. I think that in fairness, when it's presented, if it's awarded to a city employee, it needs to be disclosed. 2 times in a row, that has happened, and 2 times in a row, it was never disclosed. And I'm not against a city employee satelliting a business, or moonlighting a business, or bidding on city business, but boy, it has an awful look when it's not disclosed.
I could not agree with you more than that, Steve.
We don't have any rules against that?
No, and yeah, I think there's, sometimes there's just an honest mistake on, hey, I couldn't get this out in time. I'm not trying to, get this meeting at the time, and like that's, I want to get process better. That piece I don't like. That really needs to be disclosed. Those were before my time as city manager for those moving forward. Noticed I was like, wow. And then I looked into it. You're allowed to have city employees. I actually think we should potentially bar city employees just moving forward. It makes it easier and cleaner too, and just like having a prohibition on it. I don't know if you council agrees with that, but
That was when I was in New York City and Boston.
you can't bid on
Yeah.
projects.
Yeah.
We've had that a couple times come up where somebody's like, hey, like, I can do that through my contracting firm, and I'm like, no. You might be able to get the best price there, but, I feel like that's.
To the public out there, it could be like, you know what I mean?
I'm getting some concurrence here, I might just bring forward, some things take a lot of time to figure out, but edit to our ordinances so city employees aren't allowed to bid on these, on city projects, which is a general prohibition.
There's gonna be an interesting intersection of, we want to encourage local businesses, but you can't be a city employee, but what about a family member of an employee who owns a local business? So it might get
Well, that's easier
gray
because then
pretty
as
quickly.
long as that person's not involved in the decision-making process,
Okay.
you can kind of
I
separate
just-
them.
I'm not jumping up and down limiting employees' entrepreneurship, but I don't like how the last 2 times, And it's been over 4 years, because they've renewed the contract without going it out. So it's been, this has happened for 4 years, and with 2 contractors, and they both were city employees. And that's just not a good picture. I'm not saying we shouldn't, I'm not saying we should bar employees from satelliting and all that. I'd just like it to be mentioned. I'd like it to be on top of the table, not learn it secondhand somehow or some way. Maybe the easiest way is what you're saying, I don't know. But I don't, same thing happened down at the Harbor Park. You had an employee doing the Harbor Park vending, and then we were supposed to get paid, and we didn't get paid, and that became a mess.
Yeah, that's why I like it, just a general prohibition. If not, there might be good reasons why you go with the employee, but it's like, make it harder. You just always keep that out of it, because you'll never get, whenever you do something with an employee, you'll never get the,
It's nasty.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty big, there's a potential conflict
Yeah.
of interest. But the bigger part is the public perception.
Perception,
Yeah. And I think, yeah, I don't know, I mean, it's the first time I'm hearing of this, and I think it's, my opinion is, it's, at the very least, it's worth more of a discussion, but my instincts are, it makes more sense to just prohibit it and then run the risk of anything like that for a variety of reasons.
It's messy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's messy. Sometimes it's messy, and it's just, hey, it's a process, we can't do it, and it's like, that's something we can fix internally. Sometimes it's like, that's messy, and we should just have a policy prohibiting that kind of practice. This police chief thing is pretty simple, it's just, accepts money that we are owed, and it's $10,000 worth. And then a pre-agreement, letter of intent for acceptance of the future courthouse road. This is part of our developer agreement to the city council intends to establish as a public way. Sarah will talk about more about that one. This one should be pretty straightforward. If we don't move forward in this, there's a high chance we get sued, and we'll have to do it anyways. But we need to keep staying in compliance. Sarah will have more on that. And then the personnel matters is just my performance review. It's a long meeting. Last time this happened, I think it was July before we actually got to the performance review. But I can be around for that. We're trying to also establish a better system this time around, digitally, same process that the rest of the staff goes through. Carrie's working.
Yeah, I'm gonna work with Carrie on just making sure Charlie gets a good review from council, and then we'll have a process set up. Carrie, I'm gonna get the HR, try to get the HR committee, Debbie and Nancy, just to talk about it here in a week or two, and then, so that there's a clear process, and then Charlie can.
Yeah, I know there was an issue last year where I couldn't input information.
Yeah, we're trying, yeah,
It was-
Carrie.
I thought I had, I hadn't.
Yeah,
It was
so
up-
we're gonna-
Yeah.
Yeah, it's, yeah, nothing nefarious. Nobody's trying, but
No.
my review doesn't exist from last year in the system.
Yeah.
HR, now those things are shielded from public records requests for the most part anyways, but they're also really important, so you can look from last year.
Right.
and next
Yeah,
year.
yeah.
It doesn't exist.
No, I mean, I could probably try to talk to Michelle and see if
Reformulate
she can give me the documents that she emailed around or like go in the
Wow.
system. But again, it takes time and we got plenty of things as opposed to, we have a new system for the city staff to be reviewed in. And I think it's also important that the same types of things that I'm being scored on, or the staff's being scored on, is the same standard I'm being held to. They only have to usually have one boss do their review, I have to have 7.
You're lucky enough to have 7
Charlie,
Yeah, I think I would like the HR committee to, we haven't done this with staff yet, but do my reports as well. To
Yeah.
get a feel for
that's the
how.
best I can do for sympathy.
Did
Sorry.
good.
I'm all over it.
Sounds good.
Okay.
And this agenda will be
Thank you.
finalized this is tomorrow?
Tomorrow, yeah, Wednesday, probably tomorrow, it'll probably go out, Wednesday for the latest. All the public hearing stuff that was required for the papers is already put forward. Thank you all, it's some great stuff tonight.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
Especially after